So I want to welcome everybody to the NYU Langone Comprehensive Epilepsy Center Postdoctoral Fellowship Open House. We are seeking to give you a broad overview to the training program and hopefully address a lot of the questions that come up and are not always available within short brochures. And we will have time for Q&A at the end. I just want to give you a little bit of an overview of this is kind of the order in which we're going to go through our topics. And each one of the faculty is going to have an opportunity to share with you elements of our training program. So first I want to introduce the faculty. My name is Chris Morrison. I'm currently the training director, following on the heels of Dr. Bill Barr, who led the program for many years and is now transitioned into a role who is more directly related to the research component, but we are lucky to still have him as part of the program. We have our pediatric specialist, Dr. Rosenberg, who will be discussing the child aspects of the fellowship, which is not exhaustive, but definitely an opportunity for those who might have interest. And our new faculty member, Dr. Zachary Resch, who has joined our program in the last year. So I want to give you a little bit of an overview of the Department of Neurology here at NYU. We have a bit of a storied history and key value within the larger history of American neurology. In 1867, we had the first American neurologist, William Hammond, who became faculty here at NYU. And he was part of the precursor to NYU. NYU became its own institution in 1975. And then, of course, Dr. Hammond was also founder of the American Neurological Association. So we are one of the oldest neurology departments in the nation. So we have a nice bit of history in that regard that our training program gets to be a part of. Within the Department of Neurology, there's a number of different divisions you can see listed over here on the left. Lots and lots of different kinds of specialties within NYU. The fellowship program exists within the Division of Epilepsy, but also we have an organizational structure that we have a Division of Neuropsychology, which groups together the neuropsychologists throughout the NYU enterprise. So we have a way to connect with our neuropsychology colleagues throughout the NYU system on different campuses and within different divisions. Our history of neuropsychology within NYU is also quite storied. We have I won't say luxury, but we have an austere history with David Wexler having been a part of the Bellevue program, which is linked to the larger NYU system. Of course, we have the precursor to our Wexler tests, the Wexler-Bellevue intelligence scale. We also have Loretta Bender, who was the developer of the Bender Gestalt, who is part of the faculty. And of course, the psychopharmacophysiology lab from Hans Lucas Teuber, who contributed a lot to neuroscience and understanding brain behavior relationships. So quite a long history in that regard. A little bit about our training site and our connection to related institutions. We have had contact with our colleagues at Bellevue in the Department of Psychology. There's the Rusk Institute, which is the rehabilitation arm of NYU. We have our own faculty and trainees within the Comprehensive Epilepsy Center. We have colleagues over in the NYU Child Studies Center who we share didactics with and so forth. And we have overlap with other colleagues throughout other departments and divisions of NYU. So lots of opportunity to connect with neuropsychologists and neurologists and so forth throughout the enterprise. Our own program, our fellowship program, is been around for some number of years. It originated in 1996. We had one fellow at the time. In 2000, we were able to add 2 fellows. And then we became part of the APSIN membership program in 2007. So just a little bit of an overview regarding our clinical activities. We'll get into deeper details in a little bit, but just to let you know, our particular program does not offer remote services. It's all on site. Our focus of training is on consultation and assessment. There's no opportunity for interventions, no opportunity for therapy. And so forth. Our training program complies with the Houston conference guidelines in the clinician scientist model. And inclusive of that, we have a research component to our fellowship. And the general goal of our fellowship is to train new psychologists who are ready to walk out into the field and practice, and who will become board certified neuropsychologists. We are part of the APSIN match, the fellowship match, and just as a reminder, we will be doing our interviews. I changed the slide. It used to say this year, but I think we've kind of evolved to that model, and it'll pretty much stay that model of virtual interviewing. So some of the requirements of our program: that you must have a doctoral degree from an accredited APA or CPA doctoral program. You must have completed an APA or CPA accredited internship to include training in clinical neuropsychology. And you must be eligible to meet the limited permit and licensing requirements within New York State. It's a 2-year fellowship. The current stipend is $70,000. And NYU offers a comprehensive benefits package, so it's really quite nice. You get 24 vacation days over the course of your year, and the institution supports one conference attendance per year. As I've already indicated, the program is a member of the APSIN Postdoctoral Programs for Clinical Neuropsychology. And there's, just in case you need it, a few links relevant to not only the match and the process, but our own brochure, as well as our APSIN match code numbers. So if you shouldn't find the need, go ahead and make a note of that. So I want to move on to a bit of a discussion of our didactic activities. And for that, I'd like to introduce Dr. Zachary Resch to take us through some of those activities that are part of our training program. Dr. Resch? Oops, you know what? I'm sorry, I was a little premature. Okay, this is still me. In any case, so let me march right along with that. The clinical training activities is really where we're at the moment. So our training program, our postdoctoral fellowship training program, involves predominantly outpatient experiences. There is some inpatient element, but predominantly outpatient. You get experience with multiple different supervisors. Those of you who have been at training sites where there's multiple supervisors, that I don't know if you view that as a pro or a con. It can be both. We like to think of it as a pro. You're getting lots of different viewpoints and lots of different skill sets from different people that you can put in your pocket as something you may need in the future. The caseload that trainees typically carry is about 2 full evaluations a week. But the flow does vary. Sometimes there are shorter evaluations and more of them that need to be covered. But it's kind of averages out to that. And that doesn't sound like very much, but our fellows have a number of other responsibilities that we are incorporating into the training program to both bring them along in terms of administrative responsibilities, organizational responsibilities, supervision responsibilities, integration into multidisciplinary teams. So there are a number of other professional related activities that are part of the training beyond just straight up clinical assessment. Something about our population is important to keep in mind, that it's quite diverse. There are a huge range of patients that come to our center. The fellowship experience is largely adult, but that can consist of age 16 to, for whatever reason, lately I've had several over 90-year-olds coming through. if you have an interest in peds, again, Dr. Rosenberg will discuss those opportunities. Our population here in New York is also incredibly diverse from socioeconomic, cultural, linguistic, geographic perspective, and with an international reputation, being ranked #1 in neurology, we are also getting a lot of folks who are traveling from abroad for care at NYU. So we do have a number of people coming in from other countries, not infrequently, for their care. The presentations from the population in our catchment area is also incredibly diverse. People will have a wide degree of different neurological conditions, comorbid psychiatric conditions. We are housed within the Epilepsy Center, and fellows definitely will get a great deal of experience in epilepsy. But our service, where we are located, receives referrals from quite a diverse range of sources. So encephalitides, dementias, the bread and butter of a lot of adult neuropsychologists, brain tumors, movement disorders, and any number of other things. And it's important to keep in mind that people with epilepsy have their epilepsy sometimes because they were sick with an encephalitis, because they sustained a TBI, because they had a stroke. So it's important to keep in mind that epilepsy as a population is not at all homogeneous. In addition, the fellows get exposure to performing WADA procedures, bedside mapping. If you're looking for more information on those kinds of procedures, you can see the book that Dr. Barr and I co-edited with a number of chapters on those topics. Beyond clinical work in the form of assessments and procedures, the fellows, as I mentioned, have some multidisciplinary conference role and role in our training program. So there are rotations, which the fellows take turns. One is presenting at our morning bed rounds. We still have, for some of you in the audience who know, we have bed rounds where we actually go and get inpatient referrals from the team, and we will round on them in the inpatient rooms, and we will discuss them with the externs who are there that day. We have a large externship program. And the fellows play a role in interacting with the inpatient team and getting the referrals and pre-screening the charts and presenting those cases in the morning during bed rounds. And we make that a part of the training program. And finally, clinical activities include tiered supervision as appropriate for the fellows. We initially introduce tiered supervision in the form of supervising the externs in test administration and scoring, and later on data interpretation. And once the fellow has more experience and familiarity with our environment, as well as training themselves, we start to introduce tiered supervision in terms of report writing to sort of get those skills going as a postdoctoral fellow, rather than having your first experience supervising being after you've completed fellowship. Okay, I was a little ahead of myself earlier. Now I think I'm in the right place. Dr. Rush, would you like to discuss our didactics?
Yes, definitely. So moving beyond some of the clinical activities that Dr. Morrison just highlighted, there are many didactic training opportunities available for our fellows. Starting broadly, you'll see that on both Tuesdays and Thursdays, there are a variety of either neurology or behavioral health grand rounds. Neurology grand rounds cover the lifespan with opportunities to attend pediatric and adult focused grand rounds. In addition to that, the Epilepsy Center routinely hosts a research lecture series on Wednesday mornings. This can cover different things such as case series, recent research studies, journal club for articles that have been recently published in the field, covering a range of topics, from discussing things related to cognitive assessment, EEG, featuring people from both within the NYU system, as well as guest speakers who could be from different institutions nationally or internationally. And then the fellows also routinely not only attend our multidisciplinary surgical case conferences on Monday afternoons, but develop professional level competency by presenting on behalf of the neuropsychology service. So talking about important cognitive and psychiatric implications that we draw from our evaluations with our colleagues in neurology, neurosurgery, radiology, as they all attend these conferences for surgical planning purposes. Then we also have neuropsych specific didactics. On Tuesdays and Thursdays, we have neuropsychology didactics that are available to trainees of all levels. So we have externs at our site that fellows supervise on cases with tiered supervision. They attend these didactics. They're tailored to all levels. Interns from affiliated programs also attend these didactics. So these didactics cover a range of topics. They cover the entire lifespan. There's pediatric related content all the way to geriatric content in order to really help start preparing people for board certification. As part of this broader neuropsychology didactic experience, the fellows also get experience in a supervisory or more senior trainee role with the externs by helping them practice mock fact findings in a group-based format where the fellow takes the role of the examiner, and then the externs in a group fashion ask questions and participate in fact-finding exercises that way. We also have fellow-specific didactics on Wednesday afternoons that's led by faculty in both the Epilepsy Center and the Child Study Centers, as well as our Brooklyn campuses. These can either cover articles of different topics in neuropsychology, again, covering the lifespan. This is also where fellows from those various programs participate in fact-finding exercises of their own. In this instance, they will take the role of the examinee, and one of the faculty will be the examiner. In this way, they start getting experience practicing fact-finding in the format that is part of the board certification process, because as an absent program, part of our goal is really preparing our fellows for board certification. Along those lines, since we are an absent program, in line with that, we at the end of the first year and the end of the second year evaluate our fellows using the absent standards. So at the end of year one, our fellows will take a mock written examination covering different content areas similar to the board certification exam. And then at the end of year two, after having practiced several fact findings, both as the examiner and examinee in these different formats, the fellows will do a final mock ABIT fact finding examination. And I think that's a pretty good overview of the didactic experiences. I will say that they take a hybrid format when they're hosted by faculty in the Epilepsy Center. They're done in person, and externs that are there on that day, as well as the fellows, will attend. When they're hosted by Child Studies Center, they're done virtually. So it's a hybrid format so that people from the affiliated programs, either in Child Studies, Rusk, Bellevue, can participate as well. But certainly encourage in-person attendance when it is done through the Epilepsy Center.
Very nice, thank you. I'd now like to transition over to Dr. Rosenberg, our pediatric specialist, who can share some elements of that aspect of the program and options that may be available to the fellows.
All right, so I'm Dr. Rosenberg. I'm the pediatric neuropsychologist in the Epilepsy Center, and I'm always happy to offer training opportunities if fellows are interested. My practice is largely outpatient, occasionally inpatient, but for the most part, I see outpatients. I see patients ranging in age from anywhere from 2 to 3 to young adulthood, although the majority of my patients are really the kind of school age to adolescent range. And we offer anywhere from no pediatric experience if you're not interested, which is totally fine, to up to 20%. And again, it's really just dependent on your interest. And then, as Dr. Resch just mentioned, we do offer lifespan didactics, which include a number of pediatric-focused topics. I present some of the topics. Dr. Locascio, who is a pediatric neuropsychologist in Brooklyn, and Dr. Sarah Powell, who's in psychiatry and HEMONC, as well as a Child Study Center neuropsychologist, all present topics. So we cover a range of different pediatric topics, including epilepsy-related topics, TBI, HEMONC topics, neurocutaneous disorders, and also neurodevelopmental disorders, so autism, intellectual disability, ADHD, and so forth. We also provide pediatric-focused ABAP fact-finding practice for the fellows in the Child Study Center who are more pediatric-focused, and those are led by myself, Dr. Locascio, and Dr. Powell. And within the postdoc journal clubs on Wednesdays, we offer pediatric-focused topics as well that really are geared toward board preparation.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Rosenberg. I'm going to switch gears now to Dr. Barr, who's going to discuss the research element of the fellowship. Dr. Barr.
Okay, so remember, we advertise ourselves as a clinician scientist model of training, and with that, the scientist part is actually consuming research and performing research. So with that, we have a research requirement as part of the postdoc. There's various ways that people can do it, and the idea in the end is we want you to produce some research while here as a fellow. So you can do a spin-off from some of the existing research projects we have. You can analyze a retrospective data set. One of the things we maintain here is a registry of our neuropsych test data on patients that sign to have their data included in the registry. And there's always the possibility of performing a prospective study, although that could be a challenge at times to get, even though 2 years sounds like a long time, to get adequate end for any kind of study is pretty tough over that time period. So the timeline we go is that in the first 6 months, the postdoc will identify a topic of interest. By 12 months, have written a proposal. By 18 months, have collected the data or put the data together, analyze it, and write it up. And then there's presentations. That's one way to present it is to our training group, the didactic that Dr. Resch just talked about. We have the postdocs present their research, and also to present it at a professional meeting. A lot of times it's poster presentations or whatever at the AACN or INS or whatever. What we like is to have the project completed by 24 months and to be submitted for publication afterwards. Next slide, please. So the areas that we've been looking at, some of the things that we've been doing over the last few years, some of our interests have a couple of them clinical. One is that we've been using the R bands a lot in epilepsy assessment. So we've published some papers on doing that, and some of our other research has stemmed from that. The other thing is we've been interested in subjective memory assessment in patients with epilepsy, and with that in mind, we've collaborated with a multi-center study run out of the Cleveland Clinic and developed an instrument that is called the MAC-E, which is that we published in TCN last year. And it's a subjective memory measure that is designed to be used in patients with epilepsy. And then the third area that we've been looking at a lot is more of a theoretical area, is the use of cognitive phenotypes. So traditionally in epilepsy, our goal has been, in terms of the pre-surgical evaluations and help with the localization, is to have a kind of a lobe kind of model where looking for patients with temporal lobe profiles, frontal lobe profiles, and sometimes extratemporal profiles. And that's had some success in the past, but not probably as much as we would like. So one of the things that people have been doing in the field, and this has started about 15 years ago by Bruce Herman in Wisconsin, is put together cognitive phenotypes that are derived from the neuropsychological test data. And there's been some success in identifying these phenotypes. In general, there's been about 3 or 4 that people have identified in various research studies. And these are like looking at the patients with general levels of impairment, low impairment, or more specific issues with language and memory. So that's been of interest. In our group, we've collaborated with others, and it's a hot topic in the field of epilepsy. So next page. So in terms of some of the recent projects, so that they've really stemmed off from this. So our current postdoc, Isabel Avildsen, is actually doing a combination of these two things, looking at that MAC-E and how the scores differ between the patients with temporal lobe patients with different cognitive phenotypes. Our previous the postdoc Safa Shahab looked at the cognitive phenotypes with the R bands. So you see you're getting a pattern here that these are some of our areas of interest, and we've been combining approaches to it. Another one is Taylor Liberta looked at the MAC-E again with R bands patients, and that one. And then the previous years, we've had studies looking at our sensitivity of new array auditory verbal norms or rapid forgetting in patients with epilepsy. So we got a lot going on, and those are some of the areas I'm happy to answer questions later if anybody has it.
Thank you, Dr. Barr. I'm going to move on to documentation, which sounds like a dry topic. However, it is the bread and butter of what we do. We have to consume documentation as clinicians as well as produce it. So there's an art to being able to navigate the electronic medical records, and how to efficiently do that, how to read between the lines, how to extract the most out of it efficiently. So that's something we actually spend quite a bit of time on, helping the trainees sort of peer through the verbiage of our various colleagues to try to extract out salient information, how to cull from the EMR what's really relevant, how to not waste time going through too much of it. So that's actually is an important skill set that we do focus on with trainees. In terms of our reports, very commonly in interviews, it's, well, how would you describe your reports? How long are your reports? Well, we've published how our reports are. So if you're interested in our shorter report style, is one we tend to do with our quick inpatient turnaround evaluations that are necessary, for example, for our cardiac colleagues or looking for a neuropsych assessment pre or post, or determination of whether people are eligible for a heart transplant or an LVAD and so forth. Those can be 1 to 2 pages, and literally you're invited to go check out the handbook there, chapter 40, and you can see an example of how we do our reports and how we minimize long content over efficient, highly targeted information, so that our colleagues can get exactly what they need quickly from our reports. We have a somewhat longer style report for other circumstances, mostly outpatient and general clinical referrals. You can see, literally, you can go to the book edited by Dr. Donders and check out chapter 8 and see what an epilepsy surgical report looks like at our center. These tend to be about 4 pages and so forth. We are not long report writers. Those of you who are current trainee or past trainees on will know we generally are cutting out as many words as we can to really make our communications focused and highly useful and highly consumable by our referral sources. Not really doing a forensic work that much these days. Don't really have that as an option currently as part of the program. But of course, forensic reports don't fall under the short category by and large. So now I'm going to switch gears to our virtual tour. One of the downsides of going virtual is you don't get to get on site and see our what the space is like. So I'd like Dr. Resch to kind of give you a virtual tour.
Yeah, well, it's unfortunate that we can't have everyone on site in the virtual realm. It does save people money, but we still want you to get a sense of what the workspace is like. So on a typical day, you may start as a fellow with inpatient bedside rounds. That means you'd be meeting the patients in their room. As you can see here, this is one of our patient rooms on the epilepsy monitoring unit. They're quite large and spacious so that the patients are comfortable. It gives you a lot of space in order to do testing at bedside if that's required for the day. Most of the inpatient units look much like this. You also have in the background a pretty good view of either the East River or the city, depending on what side of the building you're on. But those rooms are quite big. Another good thing about NYU is we have a network desktop. So wherever you are on site, whether it's inpatient in the hospital or outpatient, you can access our servers. You can access it remotely at home, so that you don't need to be carrying materials place to place, which means we operate more in a modern medicine style where we have a lot of different touchdown spaces. So this is another example of touchdown space outside of some of our inpatient rooms, where you can just sit down quickly, access the computer, do chart reviews, write reports while you're waiting to see a patient. Here's another example of a workspace on the inpatient unit, more of like a closed consult room where you can sit down, access computers again. So there's consult rooms on the epilepsy monitoring unit in which externs and fellows and the technician often work at in order to kind of efficiently get chart reviews, report writing, scoring done in between seeing patients, inpatient, but certainly the same holds true for our outpatient setting. So we have a consult room, a dedicated consult room in which outpatient testing is conducted in. It's shared between the externs, technician, and fellows as needed. So we have a bunch of testing materials in here, a large desk in order to do testing. But certainly there are other office spaces similar to this in which testing can be conducted, and plenty of testing materials. But the key is with this modern medicine style that being able to access the network desktop from anywhere, you can kind of move flexibly between different settings in order to complete your work, which gives both the fellows as well as the externs a lot of flexibility in performing their various clinical activities or research activities, since the server can be accessed from pretty much anywhere you have access to a computer.
Okay, thank you. So let me go through a final set of details regarding the program. Here are some key deadlines: the match results, when they're provided, the timeline, the overall timeline of the training program, and when different activities occur. We can certainly make this available to you if you need it in a written format. But I just want to kind of highlight some of the benchmark evaluations. We've already mentioned some of these, but it's important to know that we take the board certification training seriously. So we do everything we can to support the trainee in preparing for the written examination. So the didactics are oriented towards covering a broad range of topics. And then, as you've heard, we do a mock written exam. Then at the end of the year, while we do group fact finding for learning purposes for the benchmark exam, the second year fellow will just be in a room with the faculty. It won't be a group format. It'll be kind of their final exam fact finding. And we are looking for trainees to have established they've achieved advanced skill in neuropsychological evaluation and treatment and consultation, sufficient so that they can walk out and practice independently. They need to have advanced understanding of brain behavior relationships, They are needing to demonstrate scholarly activities, submitting something for publication. They need to have completed licensure. That happens during the first year into the second year, New York State license. Ready once they've completed their post-training evaluations and samples, that they are ready to go forward with the board certification process. So this is just kind of a list of our past fellows and where we knew their location, where they are now. You'll see a number of them have made their way back to NYU. We're always happy to have our trainees back. But so you get a sense of kind of where people end up and just the sheer history of our program. Our application deadline is January 1, and the materials should be sent to me. And these are the standard materials for applying. And we'll be doing all of our interviews, as I said, virtually. And so I just want to give you our contact information. You can see there's a formula to the NYU email style. And so we'll be doing our interviews where our faculty will be participating. And then, of course, for those who want to connect with our current fellows to get a sense of what it's like to be a fellow at NYU, we have their contact information there.